America's strength at the global stage is waning, when America is no longer the dominant hegemonic force, they get scared. And when our leaders get scared, they're going to start behaving in this way. They're going to start tampering with free speech. You agree this sudden popularity of Red Note as a Chinese psyop, right? Has to be no? No, I think a lot of people love their treats. No, I genuinely think people just love their treats so much that they think it was like TikTok's algorithm was so good that the very fact that the American government is planning on banning it made the very fact that the American government said that it was planning on banning it made people go, okay, well, I'm going to find another Chinese application to go and utilize. And I think that there is also a great overemphasis on, how many people are actually going to Xiaohongshu, or how many people are actually like learning to love their Chinese counterparts. That's it. It's not like a psyop. Not everything has to be this like broad, like secret initiative, And I say this about like the American government too. Sometimes you guys will say that about like even the American government, where you're like, oh my God, this must be a psyop. By the American government, it's like, nah, it's not. It's just how things are. Once you understand what human beings are motivated by and recognize that most human beings have the exact same motivations in general, I think it makes a lot of things easier to dissect, easier to comprehend.
Upheld the law that could ban TikTok. The justices ruled the law does not violate the First Amendment. The popular video sharing app now faces a ban in the U.S. unless its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, sells to a U.S.-based company in the next 2 days. Let's bring in senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer and ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer for more. Devin, does TikTok have any legal recourse left, or is this it? Sell or be banned?
Well, this is the final word on this law, Diane, and the Supreme Court just moments ago handed down a unanimous opinion that was not signed, meaning that it was supported by the entire court. We don't know who wrote it, but it does look like Chief Justice John Roberts, saying that TikTok's argument that this law passed by large bipartisan majorities of Congress, signed by President Biden, does not violate the First Amendment rights of the company or its 170 million users here in the United States. The justices explain at length how a law like this one meets a significant government interest of protecting the United States national security for a number of concerns over Chinese collection of Americans' data and also their alleged use of the platform to spread propaganda in the United States. And therefore, by this decision, the Supreme Court effectively says that this law can stand, and the ban against TikTok can go into effect on Sunday unless the parent company ByteDance, that's the Chinese-owned company, sells its stake to any other buyer that is not a foreign adversary of the United States. And there's, of course, a lot of swirling headlines about the possibilities there, but the Supreme Court definitively saying that this law can stand and a ban can go forward, Diane.
Brian, I know you're still reading through the decision, but what do you make so far of how the justices came to this decision?
So when it comes to First Amendment violations or the allegations of such, what the courts will do is look at what is being banned and how it is being banned. What they're describing is what's called a content-neutral ban, meaning that the government didn't go out and say, you know what, any information that talks about X or Y should be banned. That would have a higher level of scrutiny. What they're saying is this is actually not a direct ban. If anything, it's telling a company that they need to divest in.
Yeah. Cope. I personally think is so ridiculous. I think it's so ridiculous that they have the audacity to claim that this isn't like a ridiculous enforcement with the express purpose of taking TikTok away from its current owners. Like, it's just, oh, it's not just a ban. Oh, it's not a ban. We just want them to divest and change the product entirely, or at least like they can't retain ownership over it
in order to be able to participate in their company within the United States, or they're completely gone. They're not selecting specific speech. And so in doing that, the court is saying, one, this is technology that we're not too familiar with. We're rushing in some sense to get the answer out here. Two, this is content neutral, and it's not about the specific speech that's being made, but the manner in which this data is being collected. And as Devin pointed out, the security risks that are put forward here and that the government is worried about outweighs that of the risk of violating or potentially violating First Amendment rights. So it's well written out. I'm still kind of going through it, but that seems to be the consensus as to why we're here.
So because the ban is aimed more at
There's nothing funnier about this than it has such a funny Western world flavor to it where they just have to do this legalese, right? In an effort to make it seem as though there is like a valid reason. And this is not disruptive. And it's not like purely an insane move that the American government is engaging in that's like ultimately censorious, right? Xenophobic and censorious, because that's precisely what it is. It's xenophobic, it's anti-competition, it's censorious. It's all three. It's the triple Monty. It goes against like the principle of American enterprise. It goes against the principle of freedom of speech. That's what it is. But because we have to always behave in a way where like this is done within the confines of a legal structure, it's not pure autocratic control. It's actually done at the best. It's actually done within the legal structure. So it's actually totally permissible. The media and all of these like legal scholars have to play this song and dance of like trying to find some sort of legal reason for it that makes this appropriate. The reality of the matter is there are no backdoors into TikTok because it is at the end of the day a Chinese corporation. There are no ways in which the American government can control the flow of information on TikTok. Okay? But also on top of that, TikTok has an incredible algorithm that is better than all of the other algorithms combined. And the American tech CEOs are desperately interested in either undermining said algorithm, destroying it, or purchasing it so it becomes an American competitor. It is in the hands of an American CEO so that they can use this as a weapon to wield down the line. Okay, does the same go for Tencent? Never heard you talk about Tencent ever? No, I have talked about Tencent quite a bit. I've actually warned that the American government will probably go after Tencent in the same manner. You know, why aren't you upset that China has blocked Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram? Because I'm not Chinese. Hello? Because I'm not Chinese. Does it make you, does it strike you as odd? Do I look Chinese to you? I know I pop off with the red sun in the sky when I sing it. So you must have thought I was Chinese. I'm American. This is another thing that I can't describe to people. For some reason, I'm like, dude, I'm an American citizen. I'm a tax-paying American citizen. Okay, I pay a load in my taxes too. And I have a decent amount of motion, right? I have a decent amount of motion in this, in a community with like, you know, tens of thousands of like-minded people. And I can't even get the Democratic Party to do the right thing to win a goddamn election. What makes you think I have any motion in China? I'm trying to fix my backyard. And you're over here being like, but what about the Chinese government not allowing Facebook? Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's not all right, dude. They should, okay? All right, what can I do about that? What can you do about that? Are you Chinese? It's so weird. Like, it's such a weird thing to just be like, well, it seems like the Chinese government is censorious. I know they are. And I disagree with that. Okay. I've openly talked about this many times. I think that China, considering that they are a global hegemonic superpower at this point, do not need to be as censorious. It's understandable if you're like a tiny island nation in the ass cheeks of the most violent superpower on the planet. It's understandable in that situation when that like most violent superpower is constantly waged war upon you, both economic war in the form of a massive embargo since your successful revolution. Okay, but like, yeah, if you're China, you have a lot more bandwidth for free speech. They don't do it. It's not up to me. I can't do anything about it. But ironically enough, I can't even do anything about the American government. And the irony is, you guys think the American government is democratic. You think the American government in our current structure actually cares about the majority opinion. It clearly does not. Because if it did, first of all, the abortion ban would have never taken place. If the American government or the American structures of governance actually cared in any way, shape, or form about the wishes of the majority, TikTok wouldn't be getting banned right now. None of it matters. We wouldn't be funding Israel's genocide. None of that matters. But when I'm, as an American political commentator, when I'm trying to describe this stuff to you, go, but what about China banning Facebook? Yeah, that's wrong. That's bad. That's messed up. They should also have their boomers get their brains warped by AI slop on Facebook. They should do that, okay? I agree with you, but what can I do? Am I Chinese? No, shut the fuck up. Meanwhile, the Mark Zuckerberg is running around the Joe Rogan Experience to be like, yeah, I hate trans people. I promise. We're not doing any fact checks no more. We hate fact checking. We hate fact checking. And it's like, okay, like, I don't even want my parents to be on Facebook. And you're like, no, the Chinese have to be on Facebook. Like, no one should be on Facebook. I'm over here trying to get you guys to literally implement Chinese Communist Party style restrictions on your parents' internet consumption so that their brains are not so goddamn warped and they don't think that like Korean Jesus is saving dogs from a flood that took place because that's the only thing that shows on your Facebook timeline, okay? And you're like, no, the Chinese must enjoy the Facebook AI slop. It's crazy. Half of your parents believe in chemtrails. Half of your parents became anti-vaxxers because of the lack of regulation and no regulatory standards whatsoever implemented on these platforms that just feed them full of goddamn slop. And you're over here being like, we need to Chinese brains in the same way.
Data collection and who owns the app versus what kind of speech is happening on it. It's not a First Amendment violation.
Correct. And when you talk about First Amendment, you often talk about how someone is being limited, what is being limited, and what means it's doing so. And it seems like the law here navigated those rules of First Amendment violations and the law in a way that the Supreme Court said that this is not about First Amendment, this is not a violation, and that there is an interest in which the government does have in protecting.
Yeah, like I said, the funniest aspect of this is that, like, people will be like, well, the Chinese government bans Facebook. Okay, that's wrong. But you understand that that's wrong. So is your argument that it's only wrong if China does it, but it's right when America does it? Like, what is the argument there? Do you think it's wrong or do you think it's right? Do you see what I'm saying? Because that's what it is. At the end of the day, it's precisely what it is. It's like they don't want such a successful social media company to be owned by a foreign adversary, a big foreign, scary foreign adversary. That's it, okay? That's it. That's it. They have no back doors. There's no way for them to control the flow of information. And the straw that broke the camel's back objectively was the ADL doing a final push because they showed how much teens were being radicalized about the Israel stuff, where there's this massive divergence between those who are under the age of 35 and those who are over the age of 35 at this point with respect to how they analyze the genocide of the Palestinians in the hands of Israel with our tax dollars. That was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Donald Trump's administration wanted to ban TikTok. People have been wanting to ban TikTok for quite some time for the reasons that I mentioned. Okay, there are multiple different factors at play here. Other social media tech giants want to own TikTok, understand its algorithm, and want to basically not have that be competition. Okay, that's why YouTube Shorts is popping off. That's why Instagram Reels is popping off. Like, they're trying to actively TikTokify their own social media platforms. But because they can't outcompete TikTok, they want to eliminate it. On the other hand, from the State Department interest, they're worried that, you know, TikTok is not controllable. There is no flow of information that they can control on that platform. So they don't like that kids are getting radicalized. Okay? Then they claim that it's because, like, oh, well, actually, they could just, like, have compromising data on people that inevitably become, like, members of the security apparatus or senators or whatever, but they're actually using, if they're on TikTok, then, like, the Chinese government can blackmail them down the line. And it's like, none of our data is actually private. They could just go to a data broker if they want to do that anyway. It's ridiculous. The irony, of course, is, and this is the reason why I don't think TikTok will be banned inevitably, is because it has too many American institutional investors that make money off of it, okay? That's why I think it's, like, ridiculous that these guys are even having this conversation at all. But yeah, I mean, this is it. I've played this before. We've heard the ADL private conversations before. But the notion that, like, 7 million small business owners have popped off of TikTok, you're just going to cast them all aside. And the billions of dollars in revenue generated off TikTok, you're just going to throw it aside because it's owned by the Chinese. It's owned by a certain percentage of it is owned by the Chinese government or ByteDance, which then still has to go back to the Chinese government and do whatever the Chinese government wants, is ridiculous.
Why has the PR been so awful? I know that's not your area of expertise, but you have to have some thoughts on that, which is, I mean, as you've said, why has Hamas disappeared in terms of public perception? An offer is on the table to have a ceasefire, and yet the world is screaming about Israel. It's like, why aren't they screaming about Hamas? Accept the ceasefire, bring home the hostages. It said it's all the other way around.
Why won't they eat our propaganda as readily any longer? Why won't the kids believe our propaganda any longer? That's the name of the game here. That's what the actual point of contention is here. Okay, you don't get it. You might never will. TikTok sheds light on the horrors of the genocide that Israel is committing, and that is horrible. Facebook empowers genocide like how they did in Myanmar, and that's obviously good. Yeah, I don't get it.
I mean, typically the Israelis are good at PR. What's happened here? How have they and we been so ineffective at communicating the realities there? And
we're on an intravenous feed of information with new impulses, inputs every millisecond. And of course, the way this is played out on social media has dominated the narrative. And you have a social media ecosystem environment in which context, history, facts get lost, and the emotion, the impact.
They're not even talking about like context, history, and facts, by the way. They're just straightforwardly talking about like their version of events. That's it. They are only talking about their version of events. That's it. They want to only have one set of facts that are readily available for all. And that's what they want. They want to be able to consistently have a faucet of propaganda. And TikTok has its fair share of this as well, by the way, like right-wing propaganda, reactionary propaganda. The problem is it also has some left-wing propaganda. It is the only platform in the United States of America that has some semblance of parity within the ideological left and right spectrum. That's it. That's what they're afraid of, and that's what they're terrified of. That's what they do not like. The fact that, you know, leftist sentiment goes above 20% on TikTok as opposed to every other platform where it's basically completely dominated by right-wing narratives is what's so scary for a lot of people, because God forbid young people, you know, because of the way that like TikTok operates, because of the way that the TikTok algorithm operates, they don't care. It just doesn't matter what the ideology is. There's no markers on like what kind of ideological predisposition you have. If it's just like something is popular, something is readily consumable, people watch it and people blow it up, and that's it. That's it. So that is terrifying.
Impact of images dominates, and we can't discount that. But I think it also.
Reddit is pretty left too, though. Reddit is literally the most specific type of. Reddit is the most NatSec liberal website out there. It's worse than many other platforms in that respect. Reddit is not left, it's liberal, okay? It is very liberal. But it's also incredibly national security focused. No matter what you try to do on IG or YouTube, you'll eventually find yourself back in a right-wing algo. Exactly. So much of the American-owned platforms, so much of the Western-owned platforms are just like far-right slanted. Reddit as well, for the record. Not far-right slanted, but Reddit is like basically a think tank in and of itself. And I mean that as a pejorative. Like when it comes to foreign policy, Reddit is like neocon central. When it comes to social democracy, domestic policy, Reddit's pretty progressive, right? They love Bernie, but they also are like everyone in China. Everyone in China is out to get America. I mean, people talk about Reddit as though it's like a very progressive space. Literally bring up the issue of Israel in 90% of subreddits. See how it goes down for you, okay? Reddit is incredibly pro-NATO, incredibly pro-American empire, incredibly Western chauvinist, incredibly anti-China, incredibly pro-Israel across the board. Part of that is also because Reddit and the way that Reddit operates as a platform lends itself to botting pretty easily, lends itself to brigading pretty easily. So like 100 people that are designated to a task can like truly undermine an entire, very popular subreddit. Like they can just change the dynamic in its entirety. It's so simple to do that. It's so simple to bot Reddit. It's so simple to brigade Reddit. It is very, very easy to control. It's very easy to control the narratives on Reddit, and people do it all the time. It happens all the time. What? Why are there 3 million accounts? Wait, what did you say? Are we gonna lose our free speech basically with Trump being the president? I mean, this is happening under the Biden administration. So one might even suspect that we are losing our free speech under the Biden administration as well, and the Trump administration is only going to accelerate it. This is not a partisan thing. I don't even think it has anything to do with parties. Okay? You know what I think? I think it's because America's strength at the global stage is waning. And when the American strength goes away, when America is no longer the dominant hegemonic force, they get scared. And when our leaders get scared, they're going to start behaving in this way. They're going to start tampering with free speech. Free speech is something that you can only have if you are so dominant around the planet that you don't care. Okay? That's what I've tried to always describe to you guys. Like, I get to say the things that I say because I have no motion, because I do not threaten the powers that be. Do you understand? I do not threaten the corporate hierarchy. You can only have free speech, and which is never fully free, by the way. Remember, obviously, Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, and many other examples of America going, okay, too much free speech for you. Okay? There's never been like a full-blown free speech. It's just that like free speech in the way that I understand it, free speech in the way that I see it, is a permission structure for what is allowed. Okay? If you are too disruptive with your free speech, if you are a whistleblower, a real one, that actually identifies some of the horrible things that the American government is doing, for example, that actually harm American interests, then they will imprison you. Then they will punish you. Maybe sometimes you might even get the CIA award for journalism, as people like to say, when you end up, committing Sudoku with 2 bullets in the back of your dome. It's just, free speech existed before the U.S. was hegemonic. Oh my God. I do love the notion that America had free speech at a time, especially before America was hegemonic. Do you think that we were more open to free demonstration? Are you crazy? Do you know anything about the anti-communist initiatives that this government engaged in? There is a reason why there is no semblance of labor in this country, labor power in this country. Okay? Because this is the heart of the Red Scare. This is the heart of empire. This is the heart of the anti-communist sentiment. This is where the Cold War was fought and won. That's why it's so funny. Like, the American history is riddled with straightforward assassinations of people that have demanded more. Things that we actually take for granted now. Literally, the weekend. Why do I celebrate the weekend every Friday and say that our forefathers fought long and hard so that we could have a sense of autonomy, a 5-day work week? How do you think that happened? There were demonstrations. People died in the process,
Has a very, very, very challenging effect on the narrative.
Yeah, a small parenthetical point, which is some wonder why there was such overwhelming support for us to shut down potentially TikTok or other entities of that nature. If you look at the postings on TikTok and the number of mentions of Palestinians relative to other social media sites, it's overwhelmingly so among TikTok broadcasts. So I'd note that's of real interest, and the president will get the chance to make action in that regard.
That's the thing I don't understand. Like, in terms of people just defending this like TikTok ban, okay? Defending this TikTok ban while simultaneously operating under this notion that like, well, the Chinese government does it too. Okay, you have an issue with the Chinese government. You're an American. You're not Chinese. And you're advocating for the American government to do so as well. Like, it makes no goddamn sense to me. Here, let's listen to this this private correspondence within Jonathan Greenblatt in the ADL.
But I also want to point out that we have a major polling, independent polling, suggests this is not a left-right gap, folks. The issue in the United States of support for Israel is not left and right. It is young and old. And the numbers of young people who think that Hamas's, massacre was justified is shockingly and terrifyingly high. And so we really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem, that our community needs to put the same brains that gave us Taglit, the same brains that gave us all these other amazing innovations, need to put our energy toward this.
That's why he's still tweeting about you? Wait, he's still tweeting about me? It is pretty crazy that this man has spent a good deal of time tweeting about me as, one of the leaders of the most significant institutions in the United States of America combating anti-Semitism. Supposedly, in air quotes, anti-Semitism. I saw one from like a day ago. Wait, really? It is pretty wild that oh, because Bernie was on my stream? What did he say? Yeah, Bernie was being anti-Semitic, huh? Me and Bernie, just two anti-Semites. A lot of people seem to view you as a dangerous anti-Semite. No, that is what's so disgusting about this, okay? No one, and I mean no one, sincerely believes that I am anti-Semitic, okay? That is so incredibly insane. No one actually believes that I am sincerely anti-Semitic. The amount of time and effort that I have spent actively combating anti-Semitism, the fact that anyone would actually entertain the notion that I am even remotely anti-Semitic is so psychotic. And that's what's so insane about this. Okay? What's so insane about it is that this is a pure fabrication. It is a very cynical weaponization. It's not that I am anti-Semitic. It's that I'm anti-Israel. That is what is terrifying. It's so frustrating, dude. The idea that Bernie Sanders would voluntarily sit for an interview with Hasan Piker, an individual who routinely has used his platform to spread anti-Jewish tropes, amplify propaganda from a designated terrorist group, and promote toxic anti-Zionism, says an awful lot about the senior senator from Vermont and the normalization of anti-Semitism. Like, if my girlfriend saw that tweet, she would just assume it's true. Okay, let me explain this one more time. I'm saying that Jonathan Greenblatt, who is familiar with my game, okay, does not sincerely believe that I am anti-Semitic. Maybe other people who don't know who I am hear Jonathan Greenblatt say this and think that. But the people that make a big fuss about this sort of thing they do not actually think I'm anti-Semitic. I know for a fact that Jonathan Greenblatt does not think I'm anti-Semitic. Okay? He is simply utilizing anti-Semitism allegations in an effort to combat his true fears. Someone who is not anti-Semitic, who is actually saying correct things about Israel. I am, in that respect, a much larger villain for Jonathan Greenblatt than someone who is deeply anti-Semitic but pro-Israel. Okay? Between me and the likes of Ann Coulter, who is deeply and unconditionally pro-Israel, while also simultaneously incredibly anti-Semitic, I am a far greater threat. You want to know why? Because his nieces and nephews tune in and listen to me talk about Israel and go, hey, I know this guy's not anti-Semitic, and I think he's making a lot of good points. That is infinitely more terrifying. Do you understand? That's it. That's the real problem here. As a matter of fact, I'll take it one step further. If I was outwardly anti-Semitic and also anti-Israel, I would not present as big as a threat to someone like Jonathan Greenblatt, because you can immediately point out someone like that for being insane. This is why the likes of Dan Bilzerian and even Candace Owens sometimes get a lot more motion in mainstream institutions and mainstream media, because you can so easily just go, well, look at that guy. They're talking about the importance of the importance of like how this is so directly related to Judaism or whatever, and the elite files or whatever. That's it. For someone like Jonathan Greenblatt, especially because they have a very short-term benefit attitude when it comes down to things like this, someone like myself, or God forbid, even scarier, an outspoken anti-Zionist Jew is significantly more terrifying. Okay? That's it. An anti-Zionist Jew or an anti-Zionist who's not Jewish, but certainly goes against anti-Semitism and routinely combats anti-Semitism is absolutely worse than someone who is overtly anti-Semitic and also anti-Israel. 100%. But please stop calling her that. You can acknowledge she's a terrible person without using racially charged nicknames. Clandis Owens? You're joking, right? You have to be joking. What is happening right now? Quite literally a white nationalist. The black woman who is a white supremacist. What is happening? Okay, you're officially woke of the day. Take a day off. Woke of the day for the chatter. Let's finish this video.
Again, like we've been chasing this left-right divide. It's the wrong game. The real game is the next generation, and the Hamas and their accomplices, the useful idiots in the West, are falling in line in ways that are terrifying. Last thing I'll just say, we saw a dramatic change in the language of the activists here in America on October the 8th. The language of groups that we've long tracked, who've long been problematic, like Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace.
Like, the funniest aspect of this kind of conversation is that, like, they'll say things like, well, they're saying the same things that Hamas is saying. They're saying the same things that Iran is saying, not recognizing that actually, for many people, unironically legitimizes the perspective. If your goal is to undermine Hamas or if your goal is to undermine Iran, you cannot actually present their perspective as the valid one in terms of Israel. But instead of trying to separate, if I was to do propaganda, okay, for Israel, which that's what the Apartheid Defense League is there to do, historically at least, you know, in the 90s, they quite literally got into trouble for spying on Jewish anti-apartheid activists and collaborating with the apartheid South African government. Okay, just, you know, that's what the ADL was doing. Okay, the Apartheid Defense League. But if your goal is to solidify the obviously, you know, anti-Hamas perspective that is broad in the United States of America, or the anti-Iran perspective that is very popular in the United States of America, then you can't hand it to them. You know what I mean? You can't present them as the only people that are saying Israel is doing a genocide to us. Okay? Because the reality of the matter there is, for many people, when they see what's going on, they go, oh my God, this is unlimited bloodshed. This is unlimited brutality happening with our tax dollars. You have to present a reasonable position. This is why I've always maintained the position that, like, liberal Zionism, to a certain respect, is supposed to give Israel much more bandwidth to be cruel and maintain the apartheid. But people supercharge their attitudes, their anti-Palestinian sentiment, their anti-Arab sentiment, their Islamophobic sentiment in the aftermath of October 7, and forgot that, like, that is the way you're supposed to do propaganda to the West. Just completely cast that aside. That's why one of the most dangerous, weapons. That's why one of the most dangerous weapons against pro-Israeli sentiment and Hasbara is the translate from Hebrew button. Okay. Like, this person has no way of comprehending that for many people like myself, okay, they had at least some understanding. Well, not myself, but like many others had at least some crumb of understanding of the dynamic there with the apartheid. And of course, immediately we're like, This is only happening because of 75 years of occupation, brutal occupation. What do you think is more likely? That people have an accurate assessment of Israeli history and settler colonial violence, or that Hamas and Iran deployed a multi-million-dollar propaganda operation completely without like the American State Department ever figuring it out? This complex multi-million-dollar propaganda operation to brainwash the American public. What do you think is what happened? And also, if that's the case, are Israeli historians like Ilan Pappé or Avi Shalom, are they also operating with Hamas propaganda in mind? People like Norm Finkelstein, they're all doing Hamas and Iranian propaganda. They're getting paid by Iran and Hamas. It's even funnier to say that they're being paid by Hamas. Like, Iran at least is a nation state in and of itself, but Hamas is a resistance group that was born out of endless occupation and works within the confines of a concentration camp. They have very limited motion outside. Yeah, Noam Chomsky being paid by the Iranian state and Hamas. Gabor Mate, Holocaust survivor, being paid by the Iranian state and Hamas. Or maybe plenty of these scholars, plenty of these academics that have spent their entire lives documenting the atrocities have come to this conclusion because they have a moral compass that allows them to see right from wrong and aren't simply invested in the maintenance of an settler colonial apartheid state.
Entity and lots of other language that we recognized from Iranian propaganda.
I'm confused by this. Why are they shadowboxing? Ignoring reality won't help them achieve their goals. No, ignoring reality and suppressing any kind of information that counters the Hasbara narratives has been incredibly effective for 76 years. Or, well, at least for 74, 75 years. It's this last year, since 2021, I would say, where things have started changing. Major U.S. Jewish groups backed bipartisan bill like a TikTok ban. Jewish federations in North America says it supports the proposed law due to concerns of anti-Semitism proliferating on the platform. Not on Twitter, by the way. Anti-Semitism proliferating on TikTok. Now, I'm not going to tell you that anti-Semitism hasn't been proliferating on TikTok. It certainly has. Sometimes I'll see a new dog whistle that I didn't even know existed was 127. And I had to dive a little bit deeper into figuring out what this meant. But I saw this dude doing I saw, no, not 127, my number, my autism score, 127,000. Okay, not my autism score, dummies. I think it's 127,000 or something like that. That's a new dog whistle. I don't even know if the ADL database has it, but I didn't know what it was at first. I was like, why are people saying 127,000, or maybe it's a different number, something along those lines. But it turns out they're saying that, or 217, is it 217 or 271? It's not 100, it's not 127, it's 271. Okay? Yeah, it's 271, it's 271, sorry. That dog whistle is the Holocaust revisionist, Holocaust denial dog whistle. It's a dog whistle to deny the 6 million number. That's the new dog whistle. And I found out about this dog whistle from TikTok, as a matter of fact. I saw the dog whistle on TikTok, and I was like, what the hell is this number? Don't act like you don't know. No, what? I have no idea what you're saying. I mean, it's already incorrect, but even then, it's like a psychotic thing to say that is supposedly acceptable. Like, what is the argument here? But anyway, listen. The point is, TikTok, of course, also has anti-Semitic sentiment. But which platform do you think has more open, overt anti-Semitic sentiment than TikTok? It's Twitter. And I've never heard Jonathan, I've never heard the Apartheid Defense League go after Twitter, okay? As a matter of fact, after Elon Musk openly seconded one of the most common Nazi ideals, the notion that Jews are doing unlimited third world immigration into the Western world to destroy Western superiority, okay? When he said, "You have said the truth," to that argument on his own platform that he owns, on his own platform that he's unbanned every single Nazi on, Jonathan went up to him and was like, yo, you got to be pro-Israel, dog. What's this about? And Elon Musk was like, no, I love Israel. And Jonathan Greenblatt was like, yeah, Elon is he's a good guy, and defended him. It was so ridiculous. This moment and this argument, this glaringly obvious instance of the Apartheid Defense League refusing to actually combat anti-Semitism, but instead working to, defend the apartheid, okay, was so frustrating that the previous president of the ADL was like, what the f are you doing to Jonathan Greenblatt? The previous president of ADL, who's also not exactly a good guy either, Even he was like, dog, what are you doing? When Donald Trump was like, if I lose, it's because of the Jews. I've given everything to you, Jews. Why won't you actually give back to me for once? I've given you Israel. I've given you everything. Jonathan Greenblatt, nothing. Just like a subtle nod, being like, Mr. President, Mr. Trump, sir, you have said something that maybe is being misunderstood. I apologize for even criticizing you, but dude, TikTok is not anti-Semitic. All the Gaza stuff just got shared a lot. No. I'm not saying TikTok is like overwhelmingly anti-Semitic. I'm saying that every platform has a decent amount of anti-Semitism in it, TikTok included, of course. But if there's one platform that you could designate as the most anti-Semitic platform, it's Twitter. Like open neo-Nazi shit goes viral on this platform virtually every single day, where there's another gif of like Adolf Hitler and people are like, we have to apologize to him. Anyway, I think the cold feet around the TikTok ban reflects that there never really was any specific security fear around it, but beyond, it's a weird Chinese app, Chinese-owned app that's popular. And that's true. I think that is the case
protecting
as well.
Its citizens and its data, and this law does stand.
Devin, the Biden administration says they're leaving this to the Trump administration to implement, but the ban is supposed to go into effect in 2 days before Trump is sworn in. Trump has said he's going to save TikTok. So how is this all going to play out now? What are you watching for?
That's the million-dollar, maybe multi-billion-dollar question, Diane. As you know, TikTok is one of the most popular apps in the world. It's certainly here in the United States. So many users, half the country, if you believe the statistics, have used this app on a monthly basis. So that's a remarkable number of people turning to the app. Now, TikTok's attorney said during the oral argument just last week that the app will go dark on the 19th if, in fact, this ban does take effect. So we'll see what that actually means. There's been a lot of debate, a lot of speculation about how it will work. But keep in mind, to Brian's point, that this law actually was aimed at ByteDance. That's the company that it addresses. That's the company it regulates. And the Supreme Court today said that foreign companies, ByteDance is owned by the Chinese, don't have First Amendment rights. They don't have rights in the United States. And so, really the law is forcing ByteDance to sell, and now they have 2 days to do that. We should say, a deal of that magnitude very likely couldn't be executed in 2 days. But the law does include an exemption for the next president of the United States, well, either President Biden or President Trump, if in fact a deal is at hand. If ByteDance does decide in the next few hours to sell, there's a buyer that's come forward. If sufficient legal arrangements are in place, then the government can move forward and take that at its word and extend this ban, delay the ban for 90 days. So that's another possible development we could keep an eye out for here in the next little bit.
Brian, in the meantime, you've seen a ton of TikTok users start migrating to other similar apps. Also, I think most, if not all of them, also owned by Chinese companies, if not ByteDance themselves. So what does this decision mean in terms of precedents for other social media apps and other kind of TikTok copycats?
One is very difficult because I didn't even know how to use TikTok. I was trying to figure it out. Now we have to move to a whole other platform. But in terms of the narrowness of this decision, think of it this way. The Supreme Court is saying is if it has two wings, and it has feathers and it has a bill, then it's a duck and it cannot apply in this way based on the law. So if other organizations come out and say, you know what, we have two wings, but we don't have feathers and we do have a bill, then the narrowness of this decision may not apply to other entities. And so what you're seeing is that the precedent's going to be narrowly tailored to the way in which ByteDance operated TikTok and the way in which TikTok collected information. If another company, foreign or domestic, decides to just go a little bit different than how the Supreme Court decided, that company may still exist. And I think the precedent is going to be other companies looking at this decision and saying, how can we exist with these rules in place?
So is this going to be congressional whack-a-mole if they try to ban them all? Is it just going to be some new company comes up and Congress has to pass a new law if they want to ban that one too?
Pretty much. It becomes a situation of if a different company comes at this in a way that ByteDance didn't, and they're operating in a way that the court did not imagine or did not contemplate, or that this law that is basically telling ByteDance that they need to divest in a different way, then yes, Congress might have to come up with a new law to adjust that. It's the way technology works.
Everyone knows you're anti-Semitic, dog. I was talking to a girl on Hinge and she asked what I watch on YouTube. I decided to take a chance and mention you with a couple mainstream names, and she promptly unmatched with me. Okay. Cope.
Technology grows, we find new ways to regulate and enforce and ensure that they're safe for all people participating.
Devin, so what's the immediate impact here? What are you watching for in literally the next 2 days?
Well, Diane, if in fact this goes forward in 2 days and takes effect, we are led to believe that American-owned companies that facilitate TikTok, so sites like Apple and Google and their app stores, won't be able to offer the app legally for download there or any future updates, at least so long as the ban is in place. So that'd be the first thing. The second question is what happens to all those people, those 100 million people who have TikTok on their phones? That's more of a murky question. The company says the app will go dark, but it's not entirely clear what that means. They haven't confirmed whether they'll flip a switch and turn it off. It is not illegal as of Sunday to have TikTok on your phone. It will not be a crime to use TikTok if it still works. So that will still be, plain.
I like that they had a good old-fashioned, before people get mad at me, I'm going to use a term that's problematic, Mexican standoff here. Okay, I actually don't even know if that's problematic or not. I'm just, being woke of the day ahead of time. But and the Chinese government, or rather the owners of TikTok, ByteDance, was just like, yeah, no, we're not going to divest, dude. Like, that's crazy. Okay, we're not going to divest. You're delusional. As a matter of fact, I'll take it one step further. We will close down our servers. So 170 million Americans that currently enjoy their treats will no longer be able to have access to their treats. And basically the American government's like, we didn't realize that we didn't have motion like that. Excuse me, you can't do that, actually. So now they have to, pass the buck to the Trump admin. I think it's so funny because if what they're saying is true and China wants to influence Americans with this app, if they don't sell it and it just goes dark, Americans who have used the app are going to be mad at the American state. That would mean China would win either way. Soft power goats. This is so dumb. Yeah. There is no way to look at this. Like, there is no valid reason for this other than we don't like that a app that is not owned immediately, like not owned directly by an American, but indirectly owned by many Americans, has this level of motion in our market, and also simultaneously has the capacity to change people's minds about certain issues that we want to control the flow of information on. We can't put our thumb on the scales. And I don't like that. What's also crazy, indirectly owned by many Americans, Fire. I mean, it is owned by many Americans. Why do they not have the same attitude towards Twitter? And I'm not talking about Elon Musk, who is obviously South African. I'm talking about the Saudi government. The Saudi government is a major owner of Twitter now. That's who actually bought Twitter. Elon Musk didn't front the entire thing. He went to Saudi Arabia and got their sovereign funds to put up billions of dollars necessary to purchase it. Why do we not have that same issue? Yeah, 60% of its parent company, ByteDance Limited, is owned by global investors. 20% is owned by its co-founders and 20% by its employees, including thousands of Americans. Saudi's second largest investors in Twitter after Musk takeover. Yep. Kingdom Holding Company and the private office of Prince Al-Walid bin Talal will maintain their stake in Twitter after Musk took control over the social media company. Saudi Arabia Kingdom's holding company, KHC, along with the private office of Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, will continue their ownership of Twitter shares valued at 1.89 billion after Elon Musk take over the social media company, making them jointly the second largest investors, according to a statement released by the Saudi prince. Bin Talal, who shared the statement on his Twitter account on Friday and made reference to Musk as the chief twit, stated that the deal was in line with the long-term strategy of KHC. Because China is not an ally, maybe, dog? Brother, I know, that's what I'm saying. That's the point. Reddit is also owned by a Chinese company, Tencent. Why is it not banned too? Because Reddit ultimately is still controlled by Americans. Okay? That's why. So much of, then what don't you understand? Wait, what? Do you think that every single time I ask rhetorical questions, I'm simply asking a real straightforward question because I don't know what the answer to that question is? Or do you think I'm using the rhetorical questions as a tool to further solidify the argument that I'm making? We do too much trade with China. They own, like, Chinese investors own, or I guess if you want to say every Chinese company is technically controlled by the government. Chinese investors and the Chinese government has control over, to a certain degree, every single company. Like so many companies. No, I understand, but that's how it's always works. Saudis are puppies. Dog, that's what I'm saying. The reason why I brought this up is because it's not about like foreign countries owning or what their internal politics look like. It has everything to do. It has everything to do with this one specific foreign country and us not having any control over the flow of information, not being able to put our thumb on the scale. That's my point.
Out a little bit. But to Brian's point, you know, this ban is only in effect in so long as a foreign adversary owns the back end of TikTok, and it can lift at any time. So as long as there's a deal that's worked out at some point, or the arrangement that TikTok has satisfies the government's concerns, then perhaps it can come back in full force even very quickly. So, you know, a lot can happen in this space, and we've seen the negotiations take off. Donald Trump, of course, has invited the TikTok CEO to be.
When I say me in frustration at work, what I actually mean is have sex with me, 62-year-old coworker. Yes, GILF lives matter.
Front and center at his inauguration on Monday. There's some speculation as to maybe he'll be able to work out some kind of a deal there. But remember, Diane, just 4 years ago, he was the one who signed an executive order banning TikTok. He was the one that wanted it out of the country. He signed a law banning TikTok from all government devices, which remains in force today. If you're a government employee, you can't download TikTok. So, you know, it's Donald Trump's method to use things like this for negotiation tactics. We'll see if he's able to pull something out of his hat. But in the meantime, come Sunday, according to the company, it will go dark.
And I do have some breaking news on that front, Devin. President-elect Trump has just posted on Truth Social that he spoke to President Xi Jinping of China, that the call was a very good one.
My goat, JD Pondon, JD Pondon, JD Pondon, baby. JD Pondon, baby.
One for both China and the USA, he says, and he says it's his expectation that they will solve many problems together and starting immediately.
You already know he's gutting the Treatlerites. You already know. You already know he's killing all of the Adolf Treatler supporters by eviscerating American trade with all of his tariffs. Okay? He wants the suburbs to scream. He wants every single drop shipper to drop dead. Okay? A true third worldist, a true Maoist third worldist, dude. You thought Xiaohongshu was the application. Turns out Xiaohongshu is actually not the red note, but the red book, the little red book that Trump has a copy of. He wasn't reading Mein Kampf. He was reading the little red book. The revolutionary sentiment lives within JD Pondon. He will take out every Treatlerite one by one.
He says we discussed balancing trade, fentanyl, TikTok, and many other subjects. President Xi and I will do everything possible to make the world more peaceful and safe. So it sounds like President-elect Trump has wasted no time trying to address this directly with the Chinese president. Of course, waiting to see what that all means. But what's your impression, Devin, or your reaction, I should say, to how much Trump has spoken about this, especially given, as you point out, he had a very different...
By the way, you misunderstand the Facebook is banned in China argument. That's about reciprocity of trade, market access. Doesn't matter, though, because the government didn't argue that. You're right as to why TikTok got banned, but legally it's no different than the restrictions on foreign ownership of media outlets. Wait, what? No, I'm saying that... What? Am I misunderstanding you? Maybe. I'm saying that I don't care. Like, sure, Facebook should exist in China. I don't give a shit. But also, I'm not Chinese. I have no control over what the Chinese government can say or do. I don't even have control over what the American government says or does. I'm in here in the process of criticizing the American government for the actions that it's taking. Oh, you're saying the government didn't argue trade reciprocity and market access as a reason to ban TikTok. Is that what you're saying? What do you mean, Geld? I don't even think it's necessarily the anti-Israel speech that was popping off on TikTok that is the major reason. I think the anti-Israel speech is the straw that broke the camel's back, because it's an indication of a much larger problem. Okay, you could point to pro-Luigi sentiment if you want as well. These are the types of things that our corporate overlords are genuinely fearful of. Okay, it's ultimately disruptive to the pre-existing hierarchy when you have loads of younger generations going, yeah, no, I don't actually have a problem with Luigi Mangione, who, you know, allegedly assassinated the CEO of a healthcare company. That is what is terrifying to people who are ultimately holding on to power. Israel just has a lot of Israel, and the pro-Israel lobby has a lot of influence in American Congress. So they were able to exert that influence and basically push this across the finish line. Republicans had their menu of cuts leaked to the press. These are all the things that they're considering to pay for Trump's second round of tax cut. Low lights include 10% tariff, lowering corporate tax rate to 15%, ending home mortgage interest deductions, taxing scholarships, pick your poison. Holy moly. Also, the elephant in the room is that TikTok survived years of escalation with China, but a few weeks of moral panic about Palestinian activism pushed the ban through. Israel's in trouble. Really is the activation word, the shut off boomers' rational political thought. Congress got so freaked out by the idea of Adolf bin Laden on the Columbia campus that they forgot why they hadn't ever banned an entire social media ecosystem from America before. I think it is yet another indication that America's soft power capabilities are diminishing. And also, American capitalism is kind of, with the private-public partnership and constant cost-cutting, constant corner-cutting, constant profit-seeking, has actually eviscerated the institutional powers of, like, the State Department, the institutional power that the state intelligence apparatus also had. So they just don't have the same motion that they used to in terms of manufacture and consent. They don't have the same motion that they used to, so they're just trying to do this, like, ridiculous thing by taking matters into their own hands and like openly and boldly trying to stop this company at all costs from, like, poisoning the mind of the youth. And it was done in such a silly way, especially because the very nature of TikTok makes everything so publicly visible. It's like, as a platform, as a social media platform, is the most successful. 170 million Americans are on it, right? It's infinitely more successful than Twitter is in terms of, like, getting normies to pay attention to a particular thing. That in and of itself is making the story much worse for them. If it was something that was, like, in the margins, like, they would have an easier time, in my opinion, banning DJI. They would have an easier time, in my opinion, banning TP-Link, right? Like, Chinese companies that they can claim are spying on Americans through these consumer products, right? They could do that. But with TikTok, it's like 170 million Americans use it. And also the very nature of the platform in and of itself is just like, it's a communication tool for a lot of normies. What is this? Hello, Americans here. Does anyone watch him? If you know who this is, what are your thoughts on him? I watch him. He looks good, but too woke, too gay. Love Kaya best. I'm too gay for the Chinese. I gotta mask it up. There's no way that's actually a Chinese person, dude. Are you kidding me? Have you guys seen what has motion in Asian countries? If I looked gayer, I would be considered hotter, I think. If I looked more androgynous, I would be considered sexier. That definitely was from China. The IP was from Anhui, a Chinese province. Oh, really? That's crazy.
Viewpoint in his last administration.
Right, and it's important to keep that context front and center as the new president comes in. And as we talk about the concerns about TikTok, these have been
Have you ever talked to Chinese who actually live there? I've seen lots of tweets without any research, just making me laugh at. Yes, I have talked to Chinese people who live in China. I also unironically have Chinese relatives who work in China.
Front and center for the United States government, Congress, Republicans, Democrats, from the CIA over to the Pentagon, President Biden, President Trump. There's really unanimity that this is a concerning situation, and they have been in negotiations with ByteDance for more than 4 years. So it's not as if this law simply came out of the blue and now all of a sudden the government is going to ban TikTok. They have tried to come up with some sort of a solution for data security, putting Americans in charge of TikTok security on the board, putting some of their data in an American-owned cloud run by Oracle. But at the end of the day, the government has said,
like, for me, I think the reason why I'm still maintaining the position that it's not likely that TikTok is banned, and I might be totally off base on this, is because of a couple things, right? Like, one, too many Americans make money off of TikTok, both on the consumer side, like both on the small business owned and operation side. 7 million small businesses have started on TikTok. And too many institutional investors make money off of TikTok because they're, the corporate investors into ByteDance directly. Okay. There's also an unimaginable amount of money that goes into TikTok in terms of marketing, for example. Like major media companies like UMG and all these other record labels have invested a lot of money and effort into TikTok as well. But on top of that, the American market, the American social contract revolves around treats. Okay? The American social contract is about easily accessible, readily available treats at my disposal at any given moment. And TikTok is a treat. Okay? If you take away this treat, people are going to get very mad. If you take away any treats from the American market, they will get mad, especially once they've grown used to it. Okay? And TikTok is a major treat for 170 million Americans. Think about how Americans responded when they couldn't get a haircut during the 1 month long period of COVID shutdowns. Okay? Think about how Americans responded when they had to be, they were forced to wear a mask in public for like a week and a half. They lost their minds because everything falls apart if you don't have access to treats. Think about how Americans reacted to inflation when treats are no longer as readily accessible and as affordable or are taken away from you. Americans go, what are we doing all this for? I don't have health care, right? My health care is a for-profit and tied to my job that I hate. Okay. I sit around in traffic to get there all day, every day. There's no, the roads are filled with potholes. The ISPs are screwing us over. We're not getting good enough service. No bandwidth whatsoever. No technological improvements that are immediately making my life better or easier. I never see any sort of tangible benefit from the technological improvements. Anytime we see any sort of tech improvements, it's actually to improve productivity, which then ends up displacing more parts of the labor force. The world is seemingly on fire or underwater, sometimes at the same time. I don't have anything. The only thing I have is the dollar menu and ease of access to treats. A relatively inexpensive television that I can buy year over year. So when you take that away from Americans, they go, well, what am I doing this for? You took the last thing I had. You can't buy a house. You can't retire. The world is on fire. There's constant war all the time. Everything sucks. Dollar menu gone, bro. I know. That's my point. Dollar menu is gone. That's the point. That's what I'm saying. How do you think Americans responded when they had to pay extra dollars for their eggs or when the dollar menu went away? This is like my first time in 5 years watching you that I disagree. They're literally shutting operations on Sunday. What you mean it won't be banned? So TikTok is shutting down operations on Sunday. How do you think it's going to be saved? I think it's a flex. I don't think they're going to shut down operations, especially considering that Joe Brandon quite literally said they're doing a 90-day extension on the ban already so that, it's up to Trump to fix it. I used to work for TikTok. We'll see. Do you feel me, though? Do you understand where I'm coming from with this, chatters? What is messy is that we hold ByteDance shares. I don't know how that severs cleanly with a U.S. acquisition. Currently working for TikTok, they plan more U.S. hires. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, TikTok themselves said that they're going dark, but they've also simultaneously not engaged in any sort of layoffs whatsoever, as far as I understand, in their American operations. That's odd. Biden is doing a 36-hour extension, as far as I know, not 90 days. No, it's a 90-day extension. It's so funny to think that these guys literally turned around yesterday. Oh, he did? I thought it was 90 days. Am I wrong? Biden didn't sign a 90-day extension. He gave it 36 hours. That's so stupid. I love that this is a self-inflicted wound by the Democratic Party, by the way, that actively pushed for this. Wonderful stuff, Mr. President. Wonderful way to leave office. Just making sure that no one under the age of 35 ever votes for the Democrats ever again. It's so sweet. It's so sick. Where's that tweet with the Chuck Schumer? I'm sure you guys have that Chuck Schumer tweet. No? This is what I was looking for. Thank you. No, not this. There's a video of Chuck Schumer talking about this yesterday as well. Not this. No, the video of Chuck Schumer.
Very opposed to TikTok.
What? No, that's not it either. But I mean, this is funny. It was a King Klippenstein tweet. Oh, this is the one I was looking for. Here it is. Congress panics, realizing no one's going to buy TikTok before the ban, a problem they created, with Senator Schumer saying it's clear that more time is needed to find an American buyer and not disrupt the lives and livelihoods of millions of Americans, so many influencers who have built up a good network of followers.
Few words about protecting TikTok's future while also protecting America's national security at the same time. It's clear that more time is needed to find an American buyer and not disrupt the lives and livelihoods of millions of Americans.
That's cool, man. What happened? You guys didn't think about that ahead of time? I'm a stupid guy. Even I could see that ahead of time. I warned this. I said this is obviously a major reason as to why it can't be banned. 7 million small businesses. 7 million small businesses, man. $11 billion of revenue generated on TikTok year over year. Are you crazy? Just because ByteDance owns it? Like, it's such a stupid move. It was such an unimaginably stupid freaking move. And ironically enough, it was so stupid that it was initially a Trump move. That's what's also fantastic about this. It's amazing that the TikTok ban was 100% a Trump GOP thing originally, that Dems found some way to completely politically own and then set up Trump to be the heroic savior of a popular platform. Absolute masterclass. Every day that goes on, I am firmly committed to the belief that the Democratic Party, if not intentionally, is operating, maybe unintentionally or intentionally, as the controlled opposition party. It's hilarious that their job effectively is to just make the Republican Party look good. U.S. government, especially the Dems, act against the people and against their own best interest to fulfill the interests of the Israel lobby. I don't think TikTok ban is such an unimaginable outcome despite everything. There are certain things that are more powerful. There are certain interests that are more powerful in American, in the American collective consciousness than doing the bidding of a couple people with motion and lobbying power. Okay, I think there's a limit to how much the pro-Israel lobby can get away with, like, pushing Congress. You can quietly engage state by state and, make it illegal to protest Israel. You can do that across the board over multiple decades, right? And they have done that. That has happened in 32 states. It is illegal to engage with BDS technically on paper, okay? But you can't do something like this when you are taking away 170 million Americans' treats from their hands in this most visible, most public way possible. And you can't do it in a way where it literally ruins a ginormous percentage of American small businesses. I think that even if they were to push for this, at the end of the day, there will be severe political repercussions for it. That's how I foresee it.
So many influencers who have built up a good network of followers. That's why last night, Senate Democrats tried to pass a bill that will extend the deadline to give everyone more time to come up with a workable solution. But Senate Republicans blocked our bill, which is stunning because time is running short. We will continue to work to find a responsible solution to keeping TikTok going. Balance. We must end goods and protect against keeping TikTok going, protect American livelihoods, and protect against Chinese Communist Party surveillance. We must and can do all three. I have made my views clear.
There's nothing funnier than, I mean, this is the perfect demonstration of Democratic Party incompetence, by the way. Like, they wrote the bill, they pushed the bill, they signed it into law, and now they're like, we're doing our very best to try and stop this bill that we pushed for and signed into law. Well, why did you write it? Why did you actively push for it? You couldn't foresee this being a major political burden?
Clear to the current administration. And I will work with the Trump administration and with both parties to keep TikTok alive while protecting our national security.
It's crazy, man. It's so dumb. And here he is back. Like, we must, yesterday, Chuck Schumer hits this line. We must protect TikTok's future. We're also protecting American national security. We're not against TikTok. We're against a Chinese company in cahoots with the CCP owning TikTok. Senate Dems tried to pass a bill to extend the deadline. Republicans blocked it. Yeah, dude, you're doing a great job pushing this on the Republicans when the most public-facing, most popular Republican out there is actively saying he's going to save TikTok. I'm sure the American population will think it's not your fault.
I have been very opposed to TikTok. I was one of the first to expose the Chinese links. And I have urged that TikTok be closed down in America. I have been very...
Well, Biden can veto it? What do you mean? He signed it into law already. What do you mean veto it? He literally signed it. The TikTok ban was already signed into law and then also went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court also then said, yes, the TikTok ban is in motion. It already happened. Here's what Chuck Schumer told President Biden, by the way, in a phone call, that the ban would damage his legacy if it occurred on his watch. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the Democratic leader, recently told President Biden in a phone call that the ban would damage his legacy if it occurred on his watch, according to two people familiar with the conversation. Mr. Schumer, who said he wanted TikTok to be sold to an American owner instead of being banned, publicly confirmed on Thursday that he had pushed Mr. Biden to extend the deadline. God, we are so stupid. I can't believe how incompetent the Democratic Party is, how stupid the Democratic Party is.
None of that is actually good enough. So whether or not Donald Trump can now come in and talk to President Xi and pull something out of a hat remains to be seen. It's possible, but it's not like he's starting from scratch in this space, Diane. And just to underscore the threat, I've heard from a number of former officials with the CIA and the NSA really emphasizing that this is dangerous. We're not just talking about, a hacker.
By the way, not enforcing it doesn't matter. The bill, in the way that it was written, extends a 5-year period, which actually goes over the Trump administration. So even if the Trump administration, the bill, in the way that it's written, doesn't punish American citizens for using TikTok. It punishes companies like Apple and Google for having TikTok on their platforms, for allowing TikTok to operate on their platforms. It punishes them to the tune of $5,000 per individual user. So that's 5,000 times 170 million. Okay? And it can be used at any point. It can be implemented at any given point. And it has a 5-year period of implementation. So at any moment, even if Trump were to say right now that he wants to protect it and give assurances that he's not going to punish, he's not going to get the Department of Justice to go after Apple or Google for maintaining TikTok on their platforms, okay, he could, one, go against that at any given moment. He could just say, you know what, I've decided I am going to punish you for keeping TikTok. That's number one. Okay? $850 billion fine. So that's number one. Number two, even if Trump were to, throughout his 4 years, defend TikTok and say that he is not going to punish, like give assurances and actually end up not punishing these companies for maintaining TikTok, okay, the next administration still has an entire year to literally punish these companies if they want to. Do you understand? So the way that this bill is written is to, make it virtually impossible. Now, having said that, there's also an additional factor here at play. Google owns YouTube. YouTube is a competitor to TikTok. So the Android store not carrying TikTok is actually massively beneficial for Google anyway. But the only thing holding this together, as I've said, the two factors holding this together is the fact that 170 million Americans use TikTok and they like TikTok. It's an unpopular move to ban TikTok. And also 7 million small businesses operate on TikTok. There's too many dollars going back and forth on TikTok. There's too much commerce happening on it. Those are the two reasons why I foresee TikTok not going away anytime soon.
Or getting your personal information online. We're talking about perhaps the biggest threat to the security of the United States, amassing large swaths of data on all Americans in every state, where they eat, what their faces look like, where they live, what their hobbies are. And the fear is, according to these officials, that someday down the line, if we were to get into a war with China or some kind of conflict, they would be able to weaponize that aggregate data in some way, maybe to pinpoint attacks, maybe to shut down key pieces of electronic infrastructure. And so that's the real danger. It's not so much about hacking your individual video of you doing a silly dance, but it's really about what they can extract from all of that on an aggregate scale.
I don't know. Some of us dance pretty badly, Devin. It could be dangerous. I'm out of time, but I do have one more quick question, Devin. We heard other Chinese-owned companies like Shein and
Dude, I'm going to say this one more time, and I 100% believe this. I trust the People's Republic of China with my hypersensitive data more than I trust Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or the American State Department. Get mad at me all day, every day. I don't care. I 100%. What are they going to do? What are they going to do with my data, man? What are they going to do? Now, the point is, I don't trust those guys, and I still use their garbage platforms. That's it.
Who brought up in those Supreme Court proceedings, now that the court has upheld this law, could we potentially see lawmakers try to go after other large Chinese-owned companies that also gather American data?
Potentially, and what it's going to be up to law enforcement now to take another look at this law, because it isn't written specifically with ByteDance and TikTok in the text, right? I mean, they were the target and the purpose of this law, but the language of the law, which was upheld today by the Supreme Court, talks about foreign adversary-owned social media platforms. There are a bunch of those, right? And so it's going to be up to the Justice Department now of the Trump administration to say whether or not they're going to target any of these other Chinese-owned companies and apps that are prevalent in our society, and whether they might seek.
So many apps, dude. Virtually all video games. Like, so many video game companies. Like, wait till these geriatric monsters in Congress find out that, like, Valorant has kernel-level access to your computers, okay? Any computer that has Valorant installed in it, in an effort to maintain anti-cheat, straight up has so much more access to everything. So much more access to everything.
The show here. As you know, we have been fighting to protect the constitutional right to free speech for the more than 170 million Americans who use our platform every day to connect, create, discover, and achieve their dreams. On behalf of everyone at TikTok and all our users across the country, I want to thank President Trump for his commitment to work with us to find a solution that keeps TikTok available in the United States. This is a strong stand for the First Amendment and against arbitrary censorship. As we've said, TikTok is a place where people can create communities, discover new interests, and express themselves, including over 7 million American businesses who earn a living and gain new customers using our platform. We are grateful and pleased to have the support of a president who truly understands our platform, one who has used TikTok to express his own thoughts and perspectives, connecting with the world.
Glaze him, King. This is like, you know what this reminds me of? I mean, he's not Chinese. He's obviously Singaporean, okay? But this kind of reminds me of the day of mourning that took place when Henry Kissinger died in China, it's like, I get why you're doing that. You know what I mean? Like, listen, I get it. Like, not the best guy to glaze, but I totally understand why you would do that. The only people on the planet that have every right to basically mourn and cherish Henry Kissinger as a positive figure in their development, in their nation state's development, is China. Because you support him in Cambodia? What do you mean? Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger is the reason why the People's Republic of China is the official recognized nation state and not the Republic of China that is Taiwan. They opened up the floodgates of normalization. China and Kissinger, Stalin and Israel, none of them had internet. Yeah. Only a tiny amount of people did that, Hassan. We know what he did, my man. I'm just saying it's valid. It's valid for the Chinese government to have an official statement of mourning for Henry Kissinger in spite of his many crimes. Okay. Whoa.
And generating more than 60 billion views of his content in the process. To all American users, thank you for making our TikTok community such a rich and vibrant space, for surprising and delighting us every day. Rest assured, we will do everything in our power to ensure our platform thrives as your online home for limitless creativity and discovery, as well as a source of inspiration and joy for years to come. Thank you. More to come.